guys, Nick Jennison, Guitar Interactive and GI Plus. It's Monday evening. We're here to do the thing that we do on Monday evenings, which is hang out and talk about the guitar. Hey, listen, if you're joining us for the first time, I want to take this opportunity to thank you for coming on board. It's great to have you. If you're one of our returning regular streamers, it is great to have you too. I do like these streams. Look forward to them every week. They're kind of a highlight of my week. I love hanging out with you guys, talking about the guitar, just kind of talking about what's been going on, I guess what's been going on in your practice, what's been going on in my little world, all that sort of thing. It's very cool. We get to hang out. We get to help you guys make some discoveries about your playing. It's all a whole lot of fun. So this week, as I'm sure you're well aware from the description down here, we are discussing the mechanics. Now, I'm going to be very specific about this, discussing the mechanics of bending and vibrato. Now, we've done a series of streams on bending and vibrato, how the masters do it. You can check those out on the Guitar Interactive YouTube channel. So if you're not subscribed to us on YouTube, Guitar Interactive that is, you can do that down below. You'll also get notifications if you hit the notification bell icon about when we're about to go live, when we're about to drop new videos. We dropped a whole bunch in this week. A bunch of reviews have made it out of magazine land into YouTube land. So make sure you subscribe to us on the Guitar Interactive YouTube channel, but you can also go and visit those streams. This week, we're continuing our Technique Fundamentals series. So we're talking primarily about the mechanics, the technique of bending, vibrato, all that good stuff. So listen, very, very quickly, I just want to take a moment before we drop in with the stream. By the way, we have had a few audio issues lately, so if everything's sounding good, let me know in the comments down below. I think it's a little quiet, but I'm sure I can figure that out as we go. Had to switch amps at the last minute just before we went on stream, so my usual setup has been slightly disrupted. The El Super Kraken is playing up, apparently. It's decided it wants to make noise for about 5 minutes and then switch off, and then switch back on for about 5 minutes and switch off. But no worries, we've got the Super Sheriff here, which is what we're plugged into today. I am in two minds about which one of these I prefer. I'm really not sure. And as you can tell, I've literally just come from the gym, so hair is wet. But that's fine. No big deal. I'm not super concerned about that. So listen, if you're getting some use out of the streams, if you're enjoying what we're doing here, a couple of ways you can help us. Keep the lights on. You can help us keep doing these for you. I love doing these Monday evening streams. You can do the following. First of all, the following are free. You can give us a thumbs up or a like on whatever platform you're watching on. You can drop us comments. The algorithm does love comments, so comments are always greatly appreciated. And of course, I love chatting with you guys too, so your comments are always welcome. Also, you can share this with your guitar playing friends. We'd like to get this out to as many guitar players as we can. If you have a friend who secretly has maybe slightly suspect vibrato, maybe you want to, you know, kind of get them on the track to truth and righteousness when it comes to wiggling strings, maybe send them this stream. Of course, you can also go to this URL down here and get more guitar lessons just like this at GI Plus. GI Plus is the exclusive lesson platform from Guitar Interactive magazine, where you can go and get more lessons from myself, more lessons from the likes of Sam Bell, who will be taking a look at a little bit later on, more on that in a moment. Lessons from Tom Quayle, from Giorgio Serci, who else now? Andy James, Rick Graham, Andy Wood. Too many to mention, right? Loads of great lessons in there. You want to go check them out, believe you me. Anyway, listen, let's check in with our stream before we get any further. And I'm just going to take this opportunity to, once again, if you're joining us for the first time, thank you for coming on board. It's great to have you. If you're one of our returning commenters, hey, looking forward to reading your comments. Let's just get into it right now. So let's see who's in the stream. Marcin, first through the door, 5:30. That is unbelievable. That's got to be a new record, right? Marcin was here a whole 2.5 hours early. That is unbelievable. PJ says, wow, you're quick, Marcin. 100%. I totally agree. PJ's in the house. PJ says, nice to see you, mate. Hand waving, referring to Marcin. Hi, Nick, and hi, everyone. PJ, it's great to see you. I should have at 6 p.m. Just to show my dominance. Marcin is winning the war of first person on the stream. It's just like a winning streak now. You know, you got to keep it up. It's great to see. He's playing his RG because it's his main workhorse guitar. Maybe I'll switch to the Strat for the lesson. Hey, you know what? Either of those are fine choices. I grew up playing RGs. Played RGs for a very long time in my youth. Got a lot of time for RGs, let me tell you. Just going to shake my hair a little bit because it's still soaking wet. PJ's in the house says, been scalloping the neck on my RG. Ooh, wow, that's interesting. Let me know how that's going because that seems like a really interesting project. RG in general generally giving it a good makeover. Great guitars. I totally agree, but I've never played an RG with a scalloped fretboard before. That is interesting. I know the Gems have a scalloped final 3 frets, which is an interesting choice. And as a rule, when I've played scalloped guitars, I actually tend to get on with them quite well. So interested to see that, because RGs historically have very thin necks. So interesting to see how the scallop impacts that. Normally we associate scallops with, of course, the Blackmore Strat and the Malmsteen Strat, both of which have reasonably sizable necks, certainly when in comparison to an RG. That's really interesting. Very, very interesting. David Yates is in the house, says, evening guys, evening Nick. My only experience with a scallop neck was trying out one of the Yngwie Strats in a shop when they first came out. My recollection was that it wasn't easy for me. It does take a little bit of adapting to. So you guys who've seen the Malmsteen tech session that's available as part of GI Plus will know that I did that on a scalloped Malmsteen Strat. That's actually Kim's Strat, signed by Malmsteen. I was very keen. I practiced it on this guitar, but I was very keen to do it on the Malmsteen Strat. Kim kind of sprung that on me last minute. He said, hey, listen, I have a Malmsteen Strat here if you want to use it. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, sign me up. Really keen to do that. It did take a bit of adapting to, let me tell you. So there were a few more takes of that tech session than maybe I would have necessarily wanted to, but you know, we got a good take and I'm happy with that. You'll actually probably see that it is composed of 2 takes, so there's a little split in the middle where we go from one take to the other. I think it was like take 6 and something ridiculous like take 20, because I just couldn't get those ascending 4s runs up the E string on that scallop neck. Yeah, true story. So yeah, scallops, they take a little bit of getting used to. Who else do we have anyway? Timothy Appling is in the house. Timothy Appling says, good morning, Nick and all of you early birds. Marcin back in his usual spot. I've got time for lunch and getting warmed up. See you all in 102 minutes. We're not even on the hour yet. This is crazy. These are all our pre-stream comments, so we love a bit of that. Just a shallow scallop. PJ's gone for, I can take maple off, but I can't put it back on. You are wise, my man. You are wise. David Yates is having a pick dilemma. Been using an Andy James flow pick, which is 2mm for about 4 years. Started playing with a 1.14 Tortex with a rounded tip that was lying around. I don't know what I prefer. Can I make a suggestion that if you like the flow, I'm just picking one up because I found one on the floor. If you like the flow, shape and profile and stuff, but you like the Tortex tone, grab hold of some Tortex flows. Haha. They make such a thing. This is the 1.14 Tortex flow. Very cool pick, right? I really like that. It has a different sound in comparison to the regular flows. I'm using a flow right now. So this is not an Andy James flow. This is a standard 1.5mm flow. I found the 2mm was just a little bit too heavy for me. So the 1.5mm flow, I'm into that. So yeah, Tortex flows, man. It's probably the middle, I guess it's a middle ground, maybe the best of both worlds. Who knows? Anyway, who else do we have? We've got some pick discussion. Very interested to know what picks you guys are using. So let me know in the comments what picks you've got today, because picks do make a difference to your tone, for sure. Like, no doubt. So anyway, let's see who else in the house. Sacred Godslayer is here. It's good to see you, man. It wouldn't be a stream without you. Using a Tortex Sharp 1.14, not the friendliest of pick, but I like the tone. It's very tight and clean. I tend to move more round picks. I tend to move to more round picks, but I can't stand the way they sound. That's really interesting. So I think a sharp pick, it definitely does have an impact on the tone. And if you guys are playing a sharp pick, the way you can tell, just like instantly, is to play with the tip of the pick and then the shoulder of the pick. Let me show you. I'm going to find it a little more difficult to get a clean sound today, but I'll try my best, because I've switched amps at the very last minute. So so if I play with the very tip of my pick here, and then with the shoulder of the pick, again, tip, shoulder, there's definitely something in there that has kind of a difference to me. I can hear a difference in the attack, difference in the chirp, and that is kind of a comparison between round tip and sharp tip. Oh, I'm sensing a whole stream on picks coming on. Maybe we'll do that one day. I am nerdy enough to do that. I did used to use like handmade picks that was something like they were like £20 each. They were crazy, but you know, when you lose one of those, or somebody, you know, steals one at a gig, man, or even just when they wear out, that's a bit of an expense. You know, £20, not you know, not a huge amount of money, but it's definitely not inconsequential, especially when it's a pick. Let me tell you. So yeah, like the flows, they kind of feel like the best of both worlds for me. We got some more discussion on picks and strings and all that sort of thing. We're going to come back to that, but very interested to know what you guys are using. Sacred Godslayer is talking about Floyd Rose. It's very interesting about this. So it says here, Floyd Rose guitars aren't that expensive, but I think they're ugly, which is strange because I'm really shape and brand agnostic. I usually like all guitars. You know, I'm kind of in the same camp with you here. Sometimes things just don't do it for you, and sometimes there are things that you think you wouldn't like, but you know, for whatever reason the planets align and you go, no, that's okay, I'm into that. Who else do we have? All the picks, right? So much of this, so much picks. We're gonna get out of that in just a moment. We'll come back to the picks. So yeah, Foghorn is here, says good evening friends, good to see you, man, hope you're doing well. Yeah, I know you had some noise problems with your amp the other day, so hopefully that's been resolved. It's amp problems all round as we go. Mark Crandall's in the house. It says, hey Nick, everyone ready for some screaming guitar? I will try my best to provide some screaming guitar for you. We got lots and lots and lots of talk of picks. Our friend Giuseppe's in the house in a language that's Sacred Godslayer. He's going to translate for us because, you know, our resident polyglot. I'm saying that. There's a bunch of you guys here that speak multiple languages. I am not one of them, unless you count Geordie and English as separate languages, which some people would. Anyway, on we go. So Timothy Appling is talking about the scalloped strat thing, or scalloped neck. This has never played a scalloped strap either. I read an article on True Temperament frets last night. That looks wild. I don't know what I would make of those, because I kind of feel like it'd be weird to bend on them. And I do a lot of the old bendy and vibrato-y stuff. I feel like it wouldn't be as linear a movement as it is on a straight fret. I'm willing to be wrong, because I've never really spent any time with a True Temperament guitar, but it's definitely interesting. The idea is a fascinating one, but still the guitar it's a pain to play in tune, even if it is very in tune, because you have to play the thing in tune, as opposed to you know, other instruments where you maybe press a key and the right tuning comes out. We'll talk more about tuning another time. That's really, really interesting. Anyway, Kim is here. Hi Kim, how you doing? Once again, thanks for your lend of the Ingve Strat. Did us proud in the end. Keith MOF is in the house. Keith, it's great to see you. We got to talk about Strandberg guitars. So Strandberg offer different models with them. I like the Per Nilsson. They're both Swedish companies. I reckon it'd be best to have stainless steel frets to avoid a refret. I think this is referring to the True Temperament frets. That makes sense. Now, Strandberg guitars, jury's out as far as I'm concerned. I can totally see the appeal, but maybe because I'm a large person, I think they look a bit crazy on me. Anyway, never mind. Daryl Queen's in the house. Hey man, it's great to see you. Hell everyone, or hello. I think I preferred hell everyone. That's kind of fun. Who else do we have? We got loads of folks in the house. I'm just gonna kind of like get through these as quick as we can. Craig Thomas here. It's great to see you. Hope everyone is well. It's a CAR Strat anniversary. Oh, very nice indeed. Really into that. That sounds killer. So we've got some great guitars in the house. Steve McD is here. Hi all. These Monday lessons are helping me a lot. Thanks, Nick and GI. Hey, you know what? Like, I love to hear that. So thanks for sharing that with us, man. Hopefully we're going to help you a lot again tonight. So that's killer. We love that you're getting some results out of this stuff. So, you know, we're really into that. Here we go. Cowcat says, to bend or not to bend, if you can't, ukulele. You know, yeah, maybe. I mean, I've said this for a while. Like, the electric guitar is inherently a badly designed instrument. It doesn't really make a lot of sense in terms of you know, the way it's laid out. It's not very ergonomic. You have to press on tightly strung metal wires that hurt to make the sound. You have to reserve your good hand, if you're right-handed at least, for activating the sound, whereas the bad hand does all the hard work. You have to memorize all these frets, because it's like having like 6 keyboards, but all the keys are white, and they're overlaid in fourths, apart from one that's overlaid in the major third, because the Spanish thought that was cool however many hundreds of years ago. But it's portable, it looks cool, it can do this, and it can also do this. that's kind of it. So that's the reason the guitar exists. So to bend, yes, to bend, I think. I will throw my hat very firmly in the Boomer Bends camp. Anyway, who else do we have? Craig's causing bother as usual. Here we go. Place your bets. Will Nick's mic work today or not? Who knows? You know what it is, like home stream. I wouldn't put too much on that because the amp died just before we started doing this. Anyway, listen, right? We got a whole bunch of comments. Don't forget, by the way, if you have questions, right, let me know down below. We will be definitely answering your questions as we go further on. Here we go. Oh yeah. Serviceman1 says, hi all from Silicon Valley, California, using my trusty Fender Tele at the moment. No scalping instruments myself at the moment. Hey, listen, a first-time commenter. It's great to have you on board, man. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. Now, listen, okay, we got some killer discussion on picks. We'll talk more about that in a minute. We've got a real interesting selection of all this going on. Oh, Paolo is here as well. Paolo is a first-time commenter, I believe. Greetings from Brazil, Nick. My name is Paolo. I dig you playing well. Paolo, that's really kind of you, man. Thank you very much. Very, very kind. Last but not least, Thomas Ross is here. Thomas Ross, great to see you. So listen, before we get stuck too deeply into the meat of today's discussion, which is the bending mechanics when it comes to bending and vibrato, I've got a little test for you. If you've got your guitars, right, I need to know the following. I want you to do some bends for me. We're going to do these ones, and I want to see what happens with your hands when we do it. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to bend a tone on the G string from the 7th fret to the 9th fret. I'm not going to do this, but I'm going to have you do it. So from G string, from here to here. Then we'll do the same thing on the B string, from here to here. Got it? So 7th fret bend on the G string, 7th fret bend on the B string. What I'm also going to get you to do is I'm going to get you to do that and then put some vibrato on the top. So bend plus vibrato. I want to know the following, right? I'll just go over that one more time. So here to here, here to here, right? I want to know the following. Do you bend down towards the floor or up towards the ceiling? Are you bending using your fingers, your wrist, or some rotational motion or some combination thereof? And can you do the bend with the vibrato in the top? Let me know in the chat. But before we do, I want to take a minute and show you this. This is a thing that dropped today, and I thought it was really cool, so I wanted to share it with you. This is a small segment of a jam that Sam Bell and I had on the Positive Grid Spark. You'll see lots of bending and vibrato in this too, so you get kind of an insight into how we do it, I guess. Then we'll come back, we'll talk about it. So, Positive Grid Spark, I met this at NAMM 2022, and it's just great. I ended up bringing 2 of them home. Brad Zelensky from Guitar World was kind enough to give me a couple, and man, like, just fantastic wee little amp. This is available on the Guitar Interactive YouTube channel, so I thought I'd share this with you. You can find it on the YouTube channel. I'm guessing Jonathan's going to post the link in the comments, so you guys can check it out after this stream. I think it's pretty cool. This is me and Sam having some fun with the Sparks. A small snippet of the full jam. The full jam is available on the YouTube channel. Yeah, check it out. I realised that I cut that short after a full pass of the track, and I left in my first wee shreddy thing that I did, and I cut it off just before Sam absolutely went off on one, right? So if you want to see Sam do the Sam Bell thing and go absolutely ham with some crazy shred, you go to this link right here. But I think it sounded pretty good, right? And for a tiny wee little amp, I thought it sounded killer. So that's the Positive Grid Spark Mini. You can check out the review here too. Now, anyway, so you guys have been fiddling around with your guitars while we've been doing this, seeing about these bending and vibrato tricks. We're going to do it again in just a second. So very quickly, Steve McD says, I bend the 7th fret G string up and down, but can only get vibrato by bending the string up. A very interesting observation, my man. Up being towards the ceiling. PJ bends up, 3rd finger supported by the 2nd, and yes, with vibrato on top. Superb. That's what we like to see. Timothy Appling says, I bend down and can use vibrato on the bend or not. Also vibrato in the 9th fret. Excellent. Good to hear it. Now, who else do we have? David Yates, I bend up. Combination of wrist rotation and finger strength for bend and vibrato. Very nice. Timothy Appling saying, easier for me to vibrato on down bend because that's the way I've always done it. Now, I can totally see that too. That's interesting. Cranker Tom has the same as David Yates, i.e. A combination of wrist rotation and finger strength and bending up. That makes a lot of sense. Don Goller bends up with a combination of wrist and finger. Mark Crandall bends up with rotation and fingers. That's interesting. But hey, perfectly valid approach. I think mine is very similar. Who else do we have? G bends up or down depending on the beginning of the phrase. Now, that is the observation we were looking for. The G is kind of the exception when it comes to, you know, what direction we bend in, if that makes sense. Anyway, it depends on day, moon location, etc. for Grammy bends plus vibrato. Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. Timothy Appling, left finger bend and vibrato down, but 3rd finger vibrato. Oh, I'm guessing that's 1st finger bend and vibrato down, but 3rd finger vibrato up. That is very interesting. Don Goller's into the amp. I'm into the amp too, man. It's a great little amp, and it's about that big. It's tiny. Should have a little. I'm going to repurpose a Guthrie Govan joke here, but it says it should have a little notice on it that says not to be taken internally. Who else do we have? Craig says vibrato is making it pitch and not ring out like I thought. It's about pitch. Now that makes a lot of sense. I see what you're saying there. We're going to come to that. I'm going to star that up because we'll come back. That's a good observation. Well, we'll come back to that in a minute. Mark Manish says, I do so wish I was at home on Mondays. Oh, mate, you're away from a guitar. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. But you can always check this out in the replay. So far, I know I only bend up with rotation. So let's talk about that. So I guess we can begin by talking about the core mechanics of bending, which is what's actually going on when we bend strings. So for those of you who are maybe less familiar with the wonderful act of string bending and how it works, I'm going to turn the delay off because that's a little annoying. There's a drier sound for us. Let's go to the multicam. If we do this 7th fret bend up from the G string to the 9th fret on the G string, a couple of ways we can do it. We can do it either by going this way, or we can do it by going this way. We refer to that as either a push bend, which is bending up towards the ceiling, or a pull bend, which is done by bending down towards the floor. Why those terms? Well, when we do the pull bend, we are literally pulling on the string. It's coming towards the middle of our hand, whereas up here, we're pushing on the string. But in reality, we're not really pulling the string in the sense of grabbing it and pulling it, and we're not pushing the string in the sense of doing this and kind of pushing on the thing. It's more just kind of a way of categorizing them in our own heads. Now, as far as push and pull bend and when to do them, a good rule of thumb is to bend where possible closer towards the center of the neck. So if you are orienting your guitar, if your guitar's here, when we play on the low E string, it's best to bend towards the center of the neck, i.e. pulling down. Whereas if we're on the B string, best to bend in this direction, which is going towards the center of the neck. Why? Because you have less chance of coming off the fretboard. Simple as that. Now, you'll see some guitar players do this where they'll bend on the B string. I always kind of like get a bit fingernails in mouth when people do that because it's like, oh, you're going to come off the end like this, which is not something we want unless we're doing that very specific Steve Vai trick where he'll play, which which is, you know, not something I can do anything musical with, but Steve Vai he's the man, so he can do that sort of stuff and get away with it. Anyway, so that is our, you know, when to do it, but there is a brief exception when it comes to the G string rather. Now, the G string can tolerate being pulled on as well as being pushed on, because it's situated kind of close to the middle of the neck. I guess you could also push the D string, but it's less common. So that's pull bends, that's push bends. Let's talk about what's actually happening here, though. What we're actually doing is we are, rather than bending the string per se, what we're actually doing is stretching the string. And I know Steve Vai refers to this as stretching strings rather than bending strings at times. So, and I think a few other players talk about it that way too. But in terms of stretching the string, what we're actually doing here is we are taking the string and we're increasing its tension. Similar to how if we took this tuning peg and tightened it up, that was a good guess, and slacking it off, and increasing and decreasing the string's tension. Now that's kind of what's going on here. The fret is still in the same place, we're still touching in the same place, but we are making the string tighter by bending it, and that's why the pitch raises. And if we think about it in those terms, it can actually be quite useful. Rather than thinking about having to push to a certain point, we can think rather about having to stretch the string to a certain tightness. Now, when you're tuning a guitar, you would never really think about having to tune the tuning peg to a specific location. You wouldn't go, oh, it has to be at this degree of turn. You just turn it until it's at the right pitch. And when we bend, it's the same sort of deal. People make an awful lot about muscle memory when it comes to bending and you know, bending the right amount. It's actually not really what's going on. What we're doing rather is we're listening and reacting very quickly. This is a bit like the way violinists intonate. So we've talked about this before. Violinists intonate by reacting and rolling the finger at just an unbelievable rate. They're so quick at this, it's not even funny. If that makes David Yates for the comment. Since a John Gom masterclass coming after that perfect tuning event. That's as close to John Gom as I get, I'm afraid. That guy has a thing going on, and I cannot do that thing. So yeah, if we think less about, you know, remembering how far to push the string and think more about listening and reacting to the pitch, makes a lot more sense. This is one of the reasons why bending to pitch in isolation can be very challenging. You know, it can be very difficult to take a bend. He says doing it pretty perfectly. I know this because I've got a tuner in front of me and I checked. It can be very difficult to bend perfectly in tune in isolation. It's a lot easier to do it in context sometimes. You may have found this in your own practice where, you know, bending to pitch is something you can do along with a track, but if you try and do it kind of on your own, it can be a bit of a weird thing. Anyway, let's talk about the mechanics. So we talked about what the bending thing is. We'll talk about some approaches and how you might do some more bending in your playing and how you might be able to do it more productively. Now, very quickly, have you ever come into that thing where you do lots of bends and get very tired? And your fingers get very tired and very worn out. I've certainly come across this myself, right? Either I'll find a tightness in the forearm or a tightness in the fingers or any of that kind of thing if I do lots and lots of bending, specifically on a guitar with very heavy strings. Now, I'm playing 10s today. I'm debating going back up to 11s. It's been a little while. I'm doing a lot of grip work at the moment in the, not direct grip work, but a lot of stuff in the gym that's challenging my grip. So forearms are getting pretty strong, which means, for me, usually means an increase in string gauge. I kind of bounce around. Sometimes I play 9s, sometimes it's 10s, sometimes it's 11s, sometimes it's even more, who knows, or some weird hybrid gauge in between. But anyway, the point with this is, what we want to do with our bending mechanics is we want to set it up in such a way that it doesn't fatigue our fretting mechanics. So what I mean by this is, let me just show you very quickly. We can use the fingers like this to execute our bends. We can push with our fingers, and we can get some interesting. Liam Tate says try 8s. Played 8s for years. Love them. Absolutely love them. But I got a bit too heavy-handed to deal with that, unfortunately. I think 8s are great. I think they sound fantastic. I think I've got a couple of sets kicking around in my string drawer here. Let's see. Yeah, I've got some 8s. Ready. Oh, 8.5s. We got 8.5s. Mighty Slinkies. Ernie Ball Boy, you guys knew that already. Anyway, it's like bending hair, says Liam Tate. Liam Tate, I know a lot about bending hair, let me tell you. Anyway, so what was I talking about? So yeah, so bending, we can do it with our fingers, right? It's not something that we generally recommend, but it can be done. And there are occasions when we'll want to do a small bend or a small correction to our bend using our fingers. So the fingers aren't completely immobile when we do bends, if that makes sense. We use our fingers, but generally speaking, what we want to do is we want to offload the task of bending onto the bigger and stronger muscles of the forearm, upper arm, and occasionally even the shoulder, but generally speaking, it's forearm and upper arm. Now, I have a question for you. We're going to do this together. We're going to go back to our bends, but I want to try bending in a few different ways. We're going to go back to our backing track, which is an A minor. We're going to be bending the G string on the 7th fret up to the 9th fret, and we're going to see what feels better when we do this together. So I want to do some bends and releases. We're going to begin by doing it using just our fingers. So you'll notice the wrist stays perfectly in place, or as perfectly in place as I can, and I'm pushing on the string with my finger. Notice the thumb has vanished back here for this example. We'll talk about the role of the thumb in a moment. So if I go here, let's try this. Let's go. Let's do it together. So we're bending using just our fingers. Let's try the same with a pull. Just fingers. It's very difficult for me to do that in tune. That sounds a bit strange. So I'm going to try a different mechanic here. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to try doing it using a lifting motion, where I just kind of take my hand and lift it up, almost as if somebody said, take this bit of your hand and touch it to the neck, like that. Let's see how that works. So a straight-fingered lifting motion. I want you to try the same. Let's do that. Let's do a pull in the opposite direction. A little more challenging. A little bit of harmonic there. This time what I'm going to try is a slight rotation movement. I want you to try the same, and we're going to see what feels best. So the slight rotation movement would be this turning a door kind of feeling. So if you turn a doorknob, you grab a doorknob like that and you turned it this way, that's kind of what we're doing here. So let's try that. I'm going to use this knuckle as a pivot point and do my bends that way. Let's try that. That also feels pretty good. Let's try and pull. Feels a little less good. But to get to the exciting bit of the backing track, so I'll stop just before there because we're not at the exciting bit of the lesson yet. So I want to know from you guys, right, what differences did you notice when it comes to bending with fingers versus bending with forearms, bending with rotation? Sacred Godslayer's got a really good observation here, as with fingers only there's not much control. It sounds like a cat in heat. Now here's the interesting thing. A moment ago we talked about intonation. We talked about the intonation that violinists use when they intonate their instruments. So what we mean by intonation is not just fretting the right note or fingering the right note, but getting that note to be as in tune as we can get it. So it would be a little like if you imagine playing a note and having it read the right note on your tuner, but the needle is somewhere like this. Whereas if something was intonated, it would be right here. Bang, vertical on the needle. Now violinists achieve this by putting their finger in the right place by muscle memory, right? But then they use a rolling motion to very quickly change their finger on the position of the string. Remember, they don't have frets, so the position of finger on the position of finger on string is like super important. If that makes sense. Zola says, Metallica song, please, bro. Yeah, you know what? I'll play you a Metallica song. I'll play a Metallica song by my band. Not Metallica song, but never mind. Hey, listen, thanks for coming on board. I'm taking the mic, but it's good to have you on board. So anyway, listen, going back to Sacred Godslayer's comments about bending and fingers. So real quick, if we take a look at the role of the fingers in bending, the role of the fingers in bending is a little like the role of the violinist's intonation when it comes to like kind of rolling like this, if that makes any sense, rolling to find the perfect position on the string to make themselves be in tune. We do that with the position of our fingers, if that makes sense, right? We do that with fingers. So if we there we go. I agree, but I'm biased, right? I'm biased because that's my... For you guys who don't know, I play in the band Blitzkrieg, so I'm biased, I would say that. So anyway, listen, if we bend with just our fingers, we then don't have the ability of the fingers to make micro adjustments to get our bends in tune, right? If we just bend, I'll say that again, if we just bend using the fingers, we then don't let the fingers, right? We don't let them have... we don't let them do the job they're supposed to do, which is basically massage the bend into being in tune. So this is kind of how it works. The hand and the forearm, sorry, the wrist and the forearm do the bulk of the movement. They do the gross, getting us in the ballpark kind of territory. They get us to the right note on the tuner. The fingers then apply and release pressure, right, to get us bang on that needle. And here's the cool thing. We don't really do it consciously. We just allow them to do their thing, right? By listening and reacting. Dan Smith from the Guitar Hour, a fine... Oh, it's Keith MOF. Keith MOF, also a fine guitar player. But Dan Smith from the Guitar Hour says, a fine guitar player and a lovely lad as well. Says, fingers only makes me feel squeamish, like someone's going to lose a fingernail or pop a knuckle out. Pop a knuckle out sounds rude. Anyway, this is another story for another day. But yeah, I'm totally with you, man. But what it fundamentally comes down to is what we lose the ability to micro-intonate with our fingers. So what we do is we don't do this on purpose. We just set up an environment where our fingers are able to do that. And the way we do it is by bending, using some movement of the wrist and the forearm. But how you choose to do that is going to vary. Let me show you the difference. So I'm going to go back to this backing track. I'm going to throw some delay on because delay is fun. I'm going to do a combination of our rotation bends and also our like lift and pull downwards bends. And the one I choose to do is kind of arbitrary. I find myself doing both. So at no point there am I doing just finger bends, but I'm also not bending without allowing my fingers to massage the pitch into being intonated, if that makes any sense. So that's the role of the finger and the role of the hand when it comes to bending accuracy. But we're not just here to talk about bends today. We're also going to talk about vibrato. And vibrato is, as we've discussed, it's basically it's a series of bends. So we bend rhythmically up and down to make things sound like they're singing, which is nice, and that's cool. A couple of quick notes on vibrato. We've talked about this before, but vibrato is accomplished using a bunch of different mechanics, right? We can do it with the same rotation / lifting movement that we get with our bends. We can do it with just fingers, and that can work too, actually. That finger vibrato thing, people really like to dunk on it, but it can sound really cool. It sounds cool on pull. I wouldn't necessarily do push vibrato like that. It feels a bit strange. Bit weird, but pull vibrato with fingers can sound kind of cool. But what I generally find myself doing, and again, there's no like hard and fast rule with this, but what I find myself doing is I find myself doing whatever the opposite movement is from, you know, whether I'm rotating. If I rotate, I tend to do that lifting movement. Rotate with a bend, tend to do that lifting movement, whereas if I lift with the bend, tend to rotate to get the vibrato, if that makes any sense. Now, a couple of quick points on vibrato. Vibrato is rarely as smooth as we think it is. We want to imagine vibrato as this smooth sine wave, but it actually rarely is. If you listen to the vibrato of the greats, especially in slow-mo, this is where it kind of gets revealed, right? Go and listen to Angus Young, or listen to Malmsteen, or listen to Clapton, or I don't know, David Gilmour or something like that. Listen to them in slow-mo, right? Here's a very, very interesting one, right? If you listen to them in slow-mo, what you'll find is we expect the vibrato to be this. where it's like a super smooth sine wave, but what actually comes out often is this. More of a squared off kind of movement. So that's kind of interesting in and of itself. But when it comes to our vibrato, we can be a little more squared as far as the approach. We can think about it as bend up, release, bend up, release. It doesn't have to be super smooth. And it can actually sound a bit weird if we are super smooth with how we get from one pitch to another. It's very hard to do that and not speak funny and not go very hard. It's not like I'm on slow-mo now. With our vibrato, it is often a lot more squared off than you think it is. So don't be afraid to be a little bit more forceful with that. Now, in terms of the mechanics with this, I would say as far as your fingers go in vibrato, if you're not doing explicitly a finger vibrato, we can afford to have them be fairly static, because our goal with vibrato is not to bend to a specific pitch. Unless you're Sean Baxter, in which case, you know, it's like tone vibrato only, regardless of whether it's appropriate or not. Not dunking on Sean. Sean's a great player, but some players have these kind of ideas that a vibrato must be a certain width, must be a certain speed. It's situational, and I don't think there's a hard and fast rule for this, but I would say personally, unless you're doing a dedicated finger vibrato thing, I would generally say that, you know, you can afford to have the fingers a little bit more locked for the vibrato than you necessarily want to with the bend. Rory Lisbon's got a very interesting point regarding the mechanics of muscle motion in the fingers. The squared off must be the mechanics of the muscle motion in the fingers. It could well be. It's definitely going to be a component of that, but I also think there's a component of what we actually want to hear. And I think it's potentially a component of how we hear singers do vibrato and trying to emulate that. And I think, you know, oftentimes when it comes to vibrato with vocalist, it is, again, rarely that super smooth sine wave. It's more... it's not super square. I've looked at my own vibrato on things like pitch correction software just to see what's going on there. And again, it is more of a rounded square, if that makes sense. And I wonder if maybe that's something to do with it. Maybe, you know, that's how we hear singers do it, so we kind of like emulate that. And there's something about this business of... it's a very strange thing. I'm just getting into this real quick. So, music and symmetry. Now, in most kind of like artistic endeavors, we think about symmetry as something that's desirable, and we want symmetry. Symmetry is in art, in architecture, and in all this sort of thing. Symmetry is great. We don't really like symmetry in music very much. It sounds a bit weird. So, for example, if we do something like this... That's a perfectly symmetrical scale, and it sounds weird. We don't like it. The symmetrical interval in the octave is this one, which you find a bit kind of unsettling. So I wonder if maybe the idea of what we think we might like versus what we actually like when it comes to sound, maybe they don't necessarily mesh. So who knows? Because I would have thought that when I intellectualized this as a younger guitar player, I used to think, oh yeah, your vibrato should be a perfect sine wave. Not true. You know, you listen and you learn, I guess. But yeah, I think it's a combination of the mechanics and also kind of what we want to hear. Anyway, listen. No way, dude, whole tone licks rock. I agree, right? I agree. But most people, you know, don't play them at your wedding gig. That's all I'm going to say. So listen, we've got some great questions coming in. We're going to do the Q&A in a moment, but I feel like this warrants a whole of the stream. So I may continue this next week. When it comes to bending and vibrato. But I want to show you guys this. If you're interested in developing this stuff more, we have a whole course on this subject in GI+. Now, I know you guys, some of you guys have done this already, and you've really had some great success with it. The course is called Expressive Techniques Part 1, deals with vibrato, slides, bends in humongous detail. We also have a number of lessons that deal with vibrato specifically. I've got a couple under Technique Hotfixes, which are just like insta wins. So yeah, if you go to Technique Hotfixes, GI+, you can find that there. That is been a really popular course. I'm planning part 2. And I managed to swipe myself out of the studio. Magic Mouse, you are to blame. Anyway, yeah, so we have a whole course on this stuff. It's called Expressive Techniques Part 1. I'm going to show you this. When we come back, we'll be answering your questions. So if you have questions, drop them down below. Oh, yeah, also Technique Hot Fixes. That's got some vibrato stuff in too. But first, Expressive Techniques. Hi guys, Nick Jennison with Guitar Interactive and GI+. Does your playing sound like this? When really you'd like it to sound like this? Now, the difference between these two examples are not the notes that are being played, but rather the way the notes are being played. I'm sure you've heard this before. Guitar players will say to you, it's not what you play, it's how you play it. And when it comes to creating interesting, emotive, and musical sounding guitar lines, that is very much the case. And in this course, Expressive Techniques Part 1, we aim to equip you with the tools to sound more musical, more emotive, more interesting, and ultimately more expressive on the guitar. And we are going to do this by exploring the three principal left-hand expressive techniques, which are slides, bends, and vibrato. I'm going to show you the mechanics of these techniques and how you can execute them cleanly, efficiently, and reliably. I'll also give you some exercises to help develop these techniques, and we're also going to discuss some musical applications, how you might use these techniques in your own playing. We're going to go into great depth with that stuff, and I'm also going to give you a solo study, a piece of music I've prepared, and I'm going to encourage you and kind of guide you through the process of applying expression to an otherwise expressionless and bare sounding piece of guitar playing. So at the end of this course, you are going to be able to take otherwise uninteresting and fairly dry pieces of music and turn them into expressive, colourful, musical lines. And you're also going to be able to take this and apply it to your own playing or to other people's music that maybe you're playing and you want to express in your own way. This is Expressive Techniques Part 1. My name is Nick Jennison for Guitar Interactive and GI+. I hope you'll join me. I will see you in there. So that is Expressive Techniques Part 1. I really think you're going to get a kick out of it. If you haven't looked at this course already, there's some really great stuff in there. I'm very proud of it. We go into deep detail about the execution of this stuff, the application of this stuff. Dan Smith's got a great comment though. It says, man, that demo with no vibrato, I held my breath. How did you end up slipping? How did you not end up slipping some vibrato on? That's almost more difficult. Believe me, that took ages, right? That was probably the hardest part of doing that trailer, was getting that we've done it, but it was weird. It was getting it to sound expressionless enough. That took some doing, let me tell you. So yeah, it was definitely more difficult than actually just playing the thing. So anyway, got some great questions coming in. Just going to highlight some of them. Rory Lisbon has a very interesting point here. Says, eighth or quarter tone bends bring tons of character a la Satriani, for sure. So what we're referring to here is we're referring to bends that are less about bending to a specific pitch and more about sweetening the pitch that we're on. There's a bunch of great videos on this. Adam Neely has a fantastic one intonation, about just intonation. I think it's something like what's it referred to again? I think something like all pitch is rhythm or something like that. And it's very interesting as far as the idea that all harmony can be boiled down to polyrhythm, and the relationship between one note and the next note. If they're simple, we think about it as being in tune, and if they're very complicated, we think about them as being less in tune. So what we can do is we can do things like this. Where we treat some bends, or treat some notes rather, with just a little tiny bit of bend. Now these are ones where I'll sometimes even just do it with my finger. I'll just do a little bit of squeeze with the finger to bring the note into pitch, because it's not really a huge amount of bend. It falls under the grounds of intonation in my book. And I guess this is also another argument for trying to reduce tension in the left hand, because we want to set up kind of an environment where the left hand can just do this, and we can hear a note and it'll know how to get it to that pitch. We tend to hear it quite a lot on the third. Also quite a lot on the flat 7. That note there is a very interesting one. That's a note that we hear as a very, very nice sounding major third, but it's actually a little bit flat. As opposed to this. That seems a bit weird by comparison. And that would be kind of like about maybe about an eighth of a tone flat, and the only way we can really achieve that is either with a bar or with bending up from below but not quite bending the whole tone. Very good observation, my man. Rory Lisbon is always good for this stuff, man. I love it when he's on the streams because he's always got some really interesting points on this. There we go. Jeff Beck, Johnny Highland come to mind when I think about those bands. I totally agree. Totally agree. Great players, but there's loads of them out there. Very Jeff Beck-ish third. You know what it is? Jeff Beck was the master of this stuff, and he was Jeff Beck. Come on. But yeah, totally. But you also hear this quite a lot in slide players. Because they have freedom to basically intonate completely. In essence, slide, for you guys who haven't been there for the discussions on slide, is less like playing without frets and more like playing with a single fret that you can just move to any point on the string. So they can basically pick up this fret to all intents and purposes and move it a tiny bit flat, or move it tiny. I say they as if I don't do a bit of this myself, but you know, we have a great course on slide, by the way. Ian Simo's Slide Guitar for Standard Tuning, also available in GI+. If you have a trem, then JB's Where Were You is a great bending thing to practice for your ear. For sure, no kidding, right? I totally agree with that, and it's a great thing to practice just for all aspects of your expressive guitar playing, I guess, if that makes sense. It is quite Zappish, actually. It's that mixed Lydian pentatonic. I totally agree. So we've got some great questions coming in. I want to highlight this one too, because this is really good fun. Marcine's got a question about gigs. I'll talk about the gigs if I get time at the end of this, because I want to get to this one. Sacred Godslayer has a very good question regarding practice, which is not necessarily what we're talking about here, but it's an interesting one all the same. And I want to see if we can get through it. So when you mention practice, to practice at a speed that's challenging, what would work better? Let's say you can reliably play in loop at 80 BPM, or play one repetition and then stop at 110 BPM. Now, this is what we refer to when we talk about practicing at a level that's challenging but not impossible. For the gym bro minded among you, this would be like practicing at RPE 8. If you don't know what that means, don't worry. It doesn't make a huge amount of difference. So anyway, it's kind of what we're talking about here with regards to practicing something at a speed where it's challenging, and if you lose your concentration, you might slip, or occasionally you'll make slip-ups and have to correct errors. I feel like part of the part of the learning process in the guitar that happens in terms of skill learning is making errors and correcting them. But we don't want to make so many errors that it becomes a wholly different movement. We want to be able to play something that is very close to what it is we're trying to play. But if we make the occasional error, that's good because it gives us the opportunity to react and correct that error. And it gives, our brain is very good at this, and it learns by correcting errors. It's one of the reasons why movement variation is very important, and practicing the same exercise over and over again, not so great. So here is a few little corollaries from Sacred Godslayer. It says both speed with clarity and no mistakes, but the difference is the number of repetitions you can get in a row. Which path would you go, repetition or burst? What I would do is I would find a speed that might be slightly lower than the 110 in this example. I would find a speed maybe about 100, which I would predict, based on what you've told me, would enable you to play maybe 3 or 4 repetitions before you start to fall apart, right? That's what I would do. And I would practice around there. So it's okay if we're practicing. Let's go back to the Paul Gilbert lick. And I've practiced this lick loads, but I'm going to see if I can artificially make myself fall off on this. Or legitimately, who knows? It's definitely not off the cards. So if I play this. A couple of mistakes there, so that's fine. That's a good speed. Good speed to be working at, because it's giving me an opportunity to make small mistakes and correct them, right? Whereas if I play too fast and I can't even get it at all, that's doing me no good. But if I play here, yes, that helps, but I feel like being there where I'm making small mistakes and having to course correct is the place to be. So in answer to your question, I would probably, in this circumstance, I'd probably look at practicing about 100. Hopefully that makes some sense. So yeah, there you go. Interesting thoughts. Here's another one, right? Mike Seedorf says, reverse bends using 2 hands in the style of VIBRATO are also great. Oh, you know what? Like, totally. We talked about this a little bit in the tapping streams. We talked about this idea of if you're wondering why it's a bit sloppy, it's I put my pick in between these fingers like an absolute knacker and I started doing these bends. It was a silly place to put the pick, but there it is. But yeah, like, I totally agree, man. It's a really, really great technique. Guys, I would love to sit and talk about this some more. I feel like we have another stream in us. I feel like, once again, I've allotted one stream to do this. And it's really not the topic for one stream. There's so much more to be doing. So let's talk more about this probably on our next week's stream. For the time being, I'm going to jam out a little bit further. Do me a favor and go and check out that jam with Sam Bell, because it was great fun. Sam's such a great guy and an absolutely wonderful player, right? So in my efforts to keep this down in terms of time on our stream, I cut it off after the first pass. And I had just started to lay down the shreddies, and Sam was about to come back with something absolutely monstrous, let me tell you. And yeah, let me tell you, it's worth going watching, right? Go watch the video, links down below. For the time being, I'm going to play a little bit more. My name's Nick Jennison for Guitar Interactive GI Plus. See how many bending, I guess, bending things we can spot in this next example. And I'll see you guys next week, 8 p.m. UK time, every Monday. See you then. fun with that all day. My name's Nick Jennison from Guitar Interactive. See you guys next week. My name's Nick Jennison, and it's a pleasure to introduce to you GI Plus, the brand new lesson platform brought to you by Guitar Interactive. We've assembled a team of the best players and educators in the world to bring you exclusive lessons covering everything from metal to blues to fusion and everything in between. Want to level up your shred chops? Check out How to Play Fast by Andy James. Or how about sweep picking with Rick Graham? Or maybe country's more your bag? Well, how about a full-length exclusive country guitar course from Andy Wood? Interested in learning how to play over changes? Well, members get access to hours of exclusive lessons from fusion maestro Tom Quayle. Or maybe you want your playing to sound more soulful? Well, who better than Chris Buck to show you how it's done? Or perhaps you want to learn the secrets of the masters. Well, members get access to over 60 feature-length tech sessions where our tutors painstakingly decode the styles of players like David Gilmour, Eddie Van Halen, John Petrucci, Larry Carlton, Slash, Tosin Abasi, Paul Gilbert, and many more. You get all this along with exclusive live webinars, free backing tracks, competitions, and so much more. So what are you waiting for? Sign up for GI Plus today.